Hey, it's Ivan with Learn Connect Act International. You can call us LCA. And I'm here with one of our senior business partners, Dr. Lynne Adams. Lynn, say hello
Hello.
to people.
Hey, everybody.
And now, Lynn, we have talked a lot about leadership and so many different topics, but one that's really near and dear to your heart is number one, high performance teams, and then balancing the priorities relative to high performing teams. So, why is that so important to you?
Well, Ivan, I think one of the things that when you think about high performing teams, of course, there's those words like goal oriented or hyper
Mhm.
focused and really achieving those goals and really setting clear expectations and results. And that's so important. And I totally think that high performing teams are important. However, also, I understand there's that human part that
Mhm.
is critical to being effective in leading high performing teams. And so I really think it's the yin and the yang or the balance of that for leaders that's critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about the critical role that leaders play in building high performing teams, but I know there are some very specific things that you believe need to happen. Talk to me about those things.
Sure, sure. So with high performing teams, and I'm a big word acronym nerd, if you
Mhm.
will, and I've come up with this whole notion of what's called
Yeah.
SCA, share,
Mhm.
care, and air.
Mhm.
And for a moment, when you think about just the share part, I always think about the book Critical Conversations by Patterson Greene and the like. And they really talk about the importance of leaders being willing to have real critical conversations with people
Mhm.
and really being willing to say, okay, I want to respectfully and professionally hear what you're saying and be willing to give you feedback on that. Or if I
Mhm.
see something, I want to be able to feel comfortable enough in coming to you and saying, hey, I want to talk about this because it made me feel uncomfortable or I didn't quite understand it. Sometimes as human beings, it's easier to sort of hide behind the email, send an
Yes,
email and step back and see
absolutely.
if it blows up. Or it's easier to in these days, stand behind our DMs. I'm going to say what I want to say, and then we'll just go back and forth and DM and go back and forth until, something explodes. Or
Yeah,
in these Zoom oriented days, it's real easy to just be off camera,
yeah,
right? I don't want to
yeah,
show my face. Don't want
yeah.
anybody to see me. I'm just going to say what I want to say, and I don't care if they see me. And then we use sort of the excuse, and sometimes it is. Don't misunderstand me. Sometimes it is. It's just not the appropriate time to be on camera. But sometimes I think we use that as an excuse of I'm not Zoom ready. I'm not ready
Yeah.
to be on Zoom. I haven't done
Mhm.
my well we need to kind of have the perspective of, especially in a leadership role, let me get Zoom ready so that people can see my face. There's something to be said with the dynamics of the face and how you're coming across. And even in these mass times when our face is covered,
Mhm.
sometimes our eyes can give it away, but sometimes they can. And it's important that people really get into that sharing piece. If we're building high performing teams, making it part of our DNA of our team that we're going to
Mhm.
be in a mode of sharing and really making sure that we're having that dialogue.
Absolutely. Wow, it's so funny because when you talk about the excuse people use to communicate ineffectively, we're so used to that. And people don't realize, as you're talking about this, it's reminding me, people don't realize that communication is the response you get. You're communicating to get someone to respond and to make sure that your message has been received. So
Right.
it's such an important thing. And it's so basic that it eludes us sometimes, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree, Ivan. I think the thing that, if you remember that game you played when you were a kid where you whispered something and it went around
Mm.
the room and then it ended up
It's
at the last
all
person
right.
and it's all dismantled. It's not what was intended. And so that communication piece as leaders, right, is so critical and making sure that we Stephen Covey, right? That habit
Hmm.
of seeking first to understand, then to be understood. So I'm going to
Ah.
sit back
Mm.
and I'm going to hear you. I want to really cancel out anything I'm noodling in my mind. Oh, I think Ivan is this, or I think he means this, or look at the way he's looking at me. He must
Hmm.
mean that, or and making assumptions. And we'll talk about assumptions in a second about Ivan versus saying, okay, wait a minute, let's step back and hear what's being said. Let me seek
Hmm.
first to understand. Let me make sure
That's
I'm
it.
hearing, and then
That's it.
I'll have my opportunity to be understood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Good.
yeah,
I love it, Lynn. And tell us more about, since you're breaking this acronym down, tell us a little bit
sure.
more about the next step.
Sure. So the S is share, the C is care. Care. That's such a when we think
Mm-hmm.
about that, we think of the touchy feely, oh, I want to
Hmm.
hug and everybody to like me. And certainly those are wonderful things. And I'm certainly not against those. But we're really talking about that ability to truly hear individuals and the ability to figure out how do I show them that I really appreciate them. You know, in
Hmm.
Chapman and White's book, The Five Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, they talk about this whole notion of really individuals have certain ways they want to be appreciated, whether it's
Hmm.
word of affirmation,
Hmm.
somebody hearing from you and hearing and letting them know that you appreciate them, whether it's quality time, just Ivan and Lynn spending some time together chit chatting and knowing that they're there, or
Hmm.
times or even acts of service. And that doesn't mean that I'm coming over to wash your car. That means that at any given point in time, if I call Ivan and say, you know, I really cannot figure out this Zoom thing, can you help me? And Ivan says, you know what? Let me set those up for you. You don't even need to worry about that. You go do something else. That in the
Hmm.
workplace is an act of service. How can I help you?
Yeah.
I'm really good at this thing, and I know it'll take me 2 minutes, where it might take you an hour because it's new to you. Let me just take that off of your hand. That's acts of service. And then gifts. Now, we're not talking about going out and buying them a car. We're talking
Hmm.
about something as simple as sending a card, a thank you card, or maybe
Hmm.
something in the mail to let that person know you were
Right.
thinking about them. So
Right.
something as simple as that. And then the touch piece. And these days, you got to be careful with that. I think of this, and you really do. And I think of this in the realm of, you know, some people do appreciate just that nice job. And
Yeah.
so, really being aware, what are those things that are important to your team members, this high performing team? And what do you need to do in order to make sure that you're sharing with them and giving them information and building them up because they want to be appreciated and you finding out what that means. Now, the other side
Excellent.
of care, when I think about this, Ivan, is there's a book by Don Miguel Ruiz that's called The
Hmm.
Four Agreements. And I'm not going to talk about all four, but The Four Agreements is such a powerful book, but so simple. Very easy
Hmm.
read if you haven't got it. But he talks about one, not building assumptions. Don't make assumptions about people. And
Hmm.
really, it's very easy. Again, it's easy for us to do as human beings, period. But especially in these days when we're really counting on technology and the phone to make assumptions about the way a person is feeling, how they're looking. And you know, one of the things I say to leaders all the time, Ivan, is no one wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I just want to be a horrible employee and have an attitude with everyone today.
Right.
That's what my day is going to
Right.
look like. No one does that. And so really
Right.
stepping
Well,
by, yes,
no, you're right. No one does that, and there are exceptions.
okay, touche. Touche. Maybe somebody, there's somebody in the world
Okay,
that does
right.
that, but you better not be that person if you're looking at this.
Right,
Right,
exactly.
exactly. So there
So
are
sorry.
people, but you know, yeah, but nobody, most people, we'll say most people don't wake up
Mhm.
saying that. And so really it's that simple principle of giving people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe
Mhm.
I say sometimes to my team, listen, I'm not my best Lynn today, so I'm just letting you guys know. So I'm going to need a couple hours. Let me have some coffee and check my emails, and I'll get back with you. But willing, so you knowing you, right?
Mhm.
And then also really not making assumptions about other people.
Right.
The other thing that he talks about in his four agreements is really not taking it personal.
Mhm.
That's really hard as human
Yeah.
beings. It's
Yeah.
really hard when you are told no, or maybe somebody's ridiculing you or criticizing you, not to take it personal. And so
Mhm.
part of it is thinking, okay, let me step back and say, am I taking this personal? Am I taking this too personal? And maybe in some instances, it really is meant to be personal. And you may have to go back up to that share, going back to that critical conversation and say, I'm sensing something else is going on here, but sort of being
Hmm.
willing to sort of think about that. And that I've been, is what I'm really talking about when I'm talking about the care piece.
Hmm. I love it. I love it. So you've said share, care,
Yep.
and then air, right?
Air,
So air, that's interesting. Tell me more about
yeah.
the air.
Yeah, so I think of this in the whole realm of mindfulness these days, right? Just
Mm,
being willing to stop. And I am by no stretch of the imagination an expert, but I am a yogi, and so I do yoga. And of course, in yoga, you're practicing breathing, or in meditation, you're practicing breathing. And I
mhm,
think that is so critical to mindfulness, and an important principle that we can all use. And it's simple as just sitting and being and allowing ourselves to have a moment to sort of take a deep breath and exhale.
mhm. Yeah.
Exactly, especially
Hmm.
during those times when it's challenging. Our days are challenging, and what would it be if we stopped for a moment as opposed to doing this and just stepped back and said, "I need a moment and I need to breathe." Sometimes we don't
Yeah.
even realize we're holding our breath as we're
Yeah.
typing or as we're responding to things or as we're listening to someone and we're
Mm.
dealing with the conflict. We don't realize we haven't even stopped to just take a breath. Do this with me now. It's as simple as that, you guys. Is stopping
Yes.
and really helping your teams do that as well. That is a lot of times what we don't take. And I think, frankly, without getting too deep, that's why we're seeing a lot of what we're seeing in society today, because people are reactionary. They want it here and now. I feel upset. I'm going to respond. I don't like it. I'm going to respond. I'm going to say something. I'm going to send that email, as opposed to just saying, okay, let me not do that.
Yeah.
There is a better way for me to do this. And as leaders, we have to set the example. What's that
Mhm.
example that you're setting as a leader as you're working in your environment? And that's really what we mean about the air piece, Ivan.
I love it. And it's so fun that you put together sort of this acronym of share, care, air, and you've given us this methodology that I think is really an important thing to reflect on as leaders. Am I doing this? And am I being mindful and intentional in doing this? And when I think about everything holistically as well as we're talking about this, I get kind of tactical sometimes because when it comes to high performing teams, a couple of really important things stand out for me. And it fits nicely into some of the things you're talking about as well. Number one, I always believe that high performing teams, you have to have people that are continuous learners, right?
Yeah.
Have to have continuous learners, and maybe that's selfish of me because that's my area of expertise. But I believe that everyone should be a continuous learner. But
Yeah.
one of the basic foundational things that need to happen, and it goes along with what you're saying when it comes to sharing and caring, is building trust. You have to have trust as a basis.
Critical.
And then once you have those things sort of built into what you're doing, then you have to have clear goals that are aligned with organizational priorities, right? And that's tactical, but it's really true. And it's something that sometimes teams get so in their hamster wheel of work that they forget, oh, what goals am I working on that are leading to the priorities of the organization? And then,
Yeah.
of course, understanding their roles and their responsibilities and making sure those are clear as well. And then managing that work based on those priorities. So, those are some tactical things that I think also fit kind of into what we're talking about. And then, when you talk about the balancing act and how to bring some balance to it all. I think that what teams miss sometimes is assessing what's urgent versus what's important.
Yeah.
Looking
Right.
at the urgency and the importance of what needs to be done, and assessing that at a task value, and looking at task prioritization as well. And and one thing, again, people need to remember when you're working with high performing teams and you're working on the balancing act is things are going to change. You
Yes.
need to be ready for things to change and have some flexibility and be nimble, because you should expect change.
Yep.
And then the last thing that I guess I throw out is I think that what a lot of leaders do is they really don't delegate very well. And in fact, what I
Absolutely.
think they do is they, rather than delegate, what they're doing is they're dumping things on people and not really helping people to understand why they're being asked to do something, and taking something off your plate sometimes that maybe you have become really, really known, you've been known for,
Yeah.
and you know that you could do really well and you could do it better and faster. Sometimes you got to give that stuff up and you have to delegate that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's so funny you say that, Ivan, because I've heard leaders say too on the delegate side, well, I look at my team, and especially during these COVID times, and I feel like
Hmm.
they're so overwhelmed. I don't want to give them yet another thing. But
Yeah,
they, as a leader, they're taking that load on still and saying, well, I just don't
right.
want to give them yet another thing. And my answer to that is, listen, if you don't, one, you're not being fair to yourself. But you're, again, going back to that assumption piece that we talked about earlier. I'm assuming that maybe they can't take it, and maybe they want something different. Maybe they're not
Hmm.
enjoying what they're doing, and adding an additional layer. And then maybe you can figure out, is there someone else that could do this other one? So then you have an opportunity to build on skill sets for everyone across your team versus making an assumption that that person doesn't want to take any additional work on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I would say, just in line with that, people change and forget to tell you that they've
yeah,
changed, right?
right.
So you have to really be prepared to really be that flexible and
Yeah,
know when you're trying to develop people and you're trying to offer these opportunities for growth, that you really look at the individual relative to where they are right now.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
You know.
yeah, absolutely.
So we talked about a lot, and of course, I'm going to have you back on, and we'll have another chat at another time. But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Absolutely. I love this, Ivan. You know me. I love to talk about leadership development in any way, shape, or form. So this has been a lot of fun. I look forward to coming back again.
Well, you and I are what I call learnopotamus,
Yes.
right? We love to learn on
Yes,
steroids,
indeed.
so
We have a
we'll keep the
problem
chat going, right? Well, I don't
between
think it's a
our books and
problem.
everything. Well, it's not a problem. It's a
Well,
wonderful thing.
thank you, thank you. I think so too. And thank you for being on today. And we will talk to you later on.